Any questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, but you were perceiving like these simple code blocks to build any application, and that would be also then part of what you showed later as a workflow. So that would then pretty much mean I take certain input and text and do whatever with it, so that the user can also understand what he or she's actually doing. Right? So that requires, so as far as I understand at least, very specific input. So how, because I mean most texts that we have are not like standardized XML or whatever, they're still just normal text. So I think that's, you know what I mean? Like the requirement for this to actually happen seems huge to me.
Well, when we want to do it digitally, we need to have kind of a digital representation of the text. And a normal text is not in itself digital. You have some kind of structuralizing them. And I think there is a lot of data existing. The bigger problem for me is the question on quality, because many of the existing data we have in the internet is based on old literature. These are editions from the 19th century. Sometimes they are really good, but it's not guaranteed. So I think this is the bigger problem. But of course, you need some kind of structured data. Or you build a kind of a tool to analyze this text and to make structured data out of it.
More questions? It was a very thought-provoking talk, which I really enjoyed. One part where I'm not sure, and I think it's also quite central in the debate about the age, let's call it digital hermeneutics, is will there ever be a moment where we don't need your utopia, so to say, of a world where we don't need to program and to code to do things digitally? I'm not sure. I like the idea of not having to learn to code to be able to use it, but I also see a tension between, not a tension, but the coding as a way of doing precisely what I need to do. If you don't need to code, you assume somehow that can be an expression of all the things humanists may want to do in a virtual research environment, and you provide all possible tools and components to build that. I'm not sure myself if that would ever be possible as one thing. And the other thing, it's more not learning to code as a way of doing things, but learning to code as a way of understanding things. I think in your model, you mentioned the black boxes, but I really like the idea of web services. At the same time, be able to know what comes in, what comes out, and what's happening in a web service is also crucial. So I will see the ability of understanding code as a way of, the more you have a focus on reusable components, the more it becomes essential as a way of diagnosing what's going on. But that's just, it's a very unstructured reaction to your talk.
No, this is a very important and good question. First of all, coding is a hermeneutic process. This is clear. And somehow it must be represented in a kind of metadata. And that this is really difficult to give an idea of the algorithms you made up. And then the question is how monolithic is it, or how modularized can you do that? And I think many things can be made modularized very good, like visualizations and so on. And then you can combine them. And I wouldn't say that historians or any kind of humanists, people from the humanities, should code them, because there are so many really good visualization tools already existing, made by Google or other people, that are so much better in programming that we will ever be. On the other hand, if you have something new, a totally new idea of visualization or whatever, of course you have to program. And of course, it is always open. But I think 90 to 95% of all the things we get that are developed are just the reinventing of the wheel at the moment. Let's say 80%. Of course, it's a question of money. So when you get money for a project, you want to program something, or you want people to program you something that is totally yours, but we could reduce this very much. I'm thinking of kind of warehouses where you have this kind of elements, and you can get them from the warehouse and build your own kind of application out of these very basic modules. So in the end, you're right, but we could reduce the amount of programming very much, and I think this would be a start, because my professors or my teachers I worked with, I think only one of them is really, not in the DH sector, but in history, only one of them is really capable of programming. And this is much. And this is a major problem. If we could think of, let the computer guys do the programming and let the historians do the historical thinking. And this is how it works at the moment. But in the end, you see, it doesn't work. Because for an IT guy, after 3 years, the system has to be ready. For a historian, the system has to be ready in the first year that he can start working. This is a major problem when you want to get money for a project. They will not come together, and they have different languages. Also, and of course, therefore, you need some kind of this hybrid forms like Digital Humanities as a discipline. But you should have it that way that they can program and have an idea of humanities, and not the different way around. They can't program properly and have no idea of humanities. This is a problem what happens with students who have to get both in the same time.
Yes, I had a little trouble telling theoretical and practical bits apart. So, for example, hermeneutics is fine, but then you mentioned things like the Halteproblem that somehow disappeared and drizzled out, what was the example? This using standards, I would say this is all fine, we all know it, it's like best practices of digital humanities. So if I take your research environment, so there are already a few research environments there, so what is new in your system that is a practical implementation of a theoretical point that you're making? Or is there something like this?
No, the major thing is, any working research environment that combine different sources. When you look at the existing research environments, they are only for very restricted topics for their own stuff, and most of them work with the question on where to put documents and anything, but they are not for research in that way. So I don't know any of that who could do that. But if you have me one, I will be glad. So am I.
At the same time, you have examples like IIIF, where if you put the focus on the standard to exchange data, then you can have something like a virtual environment where just by integrating different sources of images, all compliant to IIIF, you can have them within the same environment. So I think there are examples that show that if you put the emphasis on APIs and protocols and standards, there is something to gain. The problem is IIIF is to describe images and layouts, and that's fine. I think we can all come to an agreement. If you want to envisage the same with CDOC CRM and knowledge represented semantically, there would be, I would buy that. I would be totally for it. I just see it as I'm not ever sure if I will see that moment where I will have different sources talking in standards and I can plug them into a system and do my research. Yeah. Because as in your case, and you needed the books from Google Books or the Internet Archive, and there was not even, that's OCR. It's images and OCR if you're lucky. So you have huge availability of very unstructured resources and a few very structured ones. Yeah.
You're totally right. There is a whole lot of things to do about this. I'm thinking when you think of PDFs, and if you have every page, you could refer to the page somehow, or with an idea of site CTS as a canonical, that you could combine this, you do kind of a wrap around a PDF document, and then if there is OCR scanned, you could in the end use this OCR data to work on it and to find the place. But you're right, it's not made yet, and it's a lot of things to do. And IIIF is wonderful, true. And with the idea, of course, also you could think about PDFs like pictures, and then to describe them in a IIIF way. But I think many of these questions are already asked, and people are working on that. But most of them in their monolithic own little world. And this is just the point I want to make. Let's come together, and I think there is enough to be done. But we should, and I don't think we should use the same platform and there is one solution for everything. Not at all. But we should think of kind of a common language in that. And of course standards are existing, but we have to go a step further with that. I don't want to reinvent the world. This is also the thing. Many of the things I said is not new. Not at all.
Okay, and speaking of CDOC CRM, so you said that we need ontologies to describe the research process. I wasn't sure if you are using an ontology for that, or how you record this in your system, or if you record this in. What would you need that is not there in CDOC CRM and extensions?
If I understood CDOC CRM right, the major focus lies on objects, on historical or objects and their histories. I haven't thought about using CI docs for data yet. Did anyone do this already?
Well, they are at least working on extensions that can capture a little bit like the process of discovering knowledge, and so that might fit. I don't know. And if you're doing this, then of course you can have the recursiveness that you need in your hermeneutics. So might be interesting to look at it.
Might be interesting, yes. I wasn't sure if this is the scope of CI-doc, but if...
Not the original scope, but it's broadening.
Yeah, perhaps.
Any more questions? Otherwise, we can move to the informal discussion and have a glass of wine together with our speaker, which will take a minute.